Okay, this week's lab consists of configuring the routers and routing protocol information so we can examine how the different routing protocols we've covered in class work. So three parts to this lab. The first part will be to connect all the equipment together in the appropriate manner. The second part will be to configure and test everything to make sure everything works. And then finally, once we have completed that, then we can start the actual lab exercise of exercising the routing protocols. So if we look at what I have here, we have essentially one rack on one side of the diagram. So this would be the equipment in one. Too high. This would be the equipment in one rack. So this set of equipment is going to simulate one of the tables, and in this case, I'm simulating table 1. This other side will simulate table 2. So table 1 and table 2 will be working together, so that we have the potential for 4 people to be working together this week in the lab. So each person should get a router and configure it. So the bottom routers on each table will be simulating our LAN. So we have a bottom router fast Ethernet interface connected to the switch, and we have some PCs connected to that switch on both sides. So these are where we're going to be testing from. Our bottom routers are going to be connected to each other directly. In the lab, we're going to use T1s because they're a little easier to work with between the distances. However, today I'm using a serial because I don't have a T1 available in this software. The top routers and bottom routers will be connected together. As you see, they're connected right here on both sides. To connect a top router and bottom router together, we will need to use a crossover cable if we connect them correctly together, which is what I want you guys to do. The top router's fast Ethernet ports will be connected to each other. They will be connected in this manner such that the top router's FA00 is connected to the top switch on both sides, and then we will connect the switches together using the little white outlet boxes on the racks and the patch panels at the back of the room and a crossover cable. So we'll have straight through from the router to the switch, straight through from the switch to the patch panel, the outlet box on the rack on both sides, and then in the middle we will have a crossover. And our final connection is going to be a gig connection from the router to the switch in the back of the room to the other router. Again, we'll be using the outlet box for that and patching it, patching in the back of the room. I will assist you with getting the gig connection set up. You should be able to manage everything below the gig. On a side note, the simulator doesn't have gig interfaces available, so I'll be using fast Ethernet for the gig in this case. So once we get everything connected, then we'll start configuring it. First thing we should probably configure is our LAN. I will give you the addressing to use for that. So on our bottom router, we need to configure some interfaces. My FA00 is going to be my LAN interface. For table 1, I will be using 11.0 networks. In this case, I'm going to use 11.1 for my 255 for my router interface with a 224 subnet mask. That gives me enough for 30 usable hosts, which is what I specified for this particular interface. After that is configured, we'll want to configure our PCs and verify that connectivity. Again, we'll be doing this for the equipment. And make sure you put the right address for your gateway. So once we get that configured, I should be able to ping 11.1 right now. Sometimes the first ping fails in this tool, so we'll wait for a second. And there, so that's good. We only really need one PC, but if each person on the team wants to be able to participate and test, we need to configure both PCs to be on the same network connected to the router and the router's LAN. So now we should have our LANs. Good. Alright, so now I have my LAN good. Now I want to configure my router-to-router network. So on my bottom router, I'm going to configure my FA01. I'm going to give it the IP address 192.168.11.254 with 30-bit mask, which is 252 for the last octet of the net mask. 30-bit mask gives us 2 usable devices. So anytime we have routers or something like that connected directly together, we'll just go ahead and use a 30 so we're not wasting any extra spaces. That's the most efficient use of our addressing. I'll configure this router. It's fast Ethernet 0/1 to be in the same network. 11.253 for the 30-bit mask. So now that interface should be up, so I should be able to hopefully ping 254 is the other router. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so that works. 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5. So I highly recommend that as you go along and you're configuring things, you actually do test it as you go, because at the end we're going to test everything, and it'll be a lot easier to figure out what's not right. Back to the bottom router, we're going to be connecting the bottom router serial to the serial on the other router. In this case, I'm going to be configuring serial 020, 010. In the lab, if you're using the T1, you'll be configuring serial 020. So make sure you get the right address, the right interface, I guess I should say. Again, I'll give you the addresses you're going to be using, so you don't have to worry too much about that at this point. Let's see, that interface is done. So that's all of the interface configuration I need to do on the bottom router. I'll go ahead and do the bottom router over here for fun to get its LAN interface done and its serial. That sucks. I'll skip that for a minute. We'll go up here. This router is FA00. It's going to connect between the tables. I'm going to give it an IP. Alright, and then I'll go ahead and configure the interface. Is going to be simulating the gig. We're going to be using the gig in the lab. That'll be gig 0/3/0. But since I don't have gig, I'll just be using the fast Ethernet, other fast Ethernet address interface I have for that. Alright, so that pretty much configures the balance of the left side of the table. The serial is not up yet because I don't have the serial up on this side, so now I'll go try to do that. Well, I'll go ahead and do the LAN first. Oh yeah, IP address, that might help, huh? Shut down FA0/1. Again, I'm using serial 010 right now. If you're using T1 in the lab, that will be 020. Alrighty, one more router. This one. 2.0. This will be my network between the two top switches, between the two tables going across the top switches. So use 21 for that. And then my simulated gating interface, which in this case is just fast Ethernet. Oops. Alright, so that should be all of my interfaces. So in theory, I should be able to ping between each router and the other router interfaces on the same network, but I will not be able to ping. I will not be able to ping across the networks yet because I haven't configured any routing information. In the past, we have used routing, static routing, and we've used RIP without really much thought in how those different protocols work. But today, we're going to actually study how the protocols work. That's the point of today's lab exercise. Ooh, God, IP address there. Yeah, ping. That was the wrong one, it wasn't. That was an unpleasant sound. I didn't like that. Alright, so I can ping my gateway. That should be good as far as IP addresses go. Now I just need to configure RIP on all 4 routers. So for the RIP config, we need to tell each router what networks it knows about. So if we do show IP int brief, we can see which routers, which IP addresses we're connected to. If we look at this, we're connected to the 11 network and the 12 network on the bottom router. So we can put those 2.168.0. Oh, router RIP. Yeah. Getting in too big a hurry today. 12.0. Not 12, yeah, 12. And also, we're going to use version 2 of RIP because it supports some better features in version 1 to make it a little more useful and helpful for us. So we'll do the same thing over here. First, we'll see which networks we're connected to. So here we're connected to 21, 11, and 1. So we'll configure RIP version 2. Put our network statements in there. 1.0, 11.0, and 21.0. So in theory, at this point, I should be getting some routing table information from my bottom router. I show IP route. I see that I have indeed learned some information from my bottom router through the RIP routing protocol. The R stands for RIP. And I've learned how to get to 11.0/27, which is my LAN. And I've learned how to get to 12.0, which is my router-to-router network down there. Alright, so now we'll configure these 2 over here for RIP. Same way, show IP int brief. And now I can add those networks that I'm connected to. Router RIP, version 2, network 22.0, 12.0. That should be good for that router. And now we'll do slash router quickly, hopefully. It's connected to 1, 22, and 21, so router RIP, version 2, network 21.0, 22.0, 1.0. And that will be, that's really all the configuration we have to do at this point. So at this point we should have a routing table that shows all the information of all our different networks, and if we look at that, it looks like